Roman tennis player who replaced Roger Federer, who retired for good on Saturday night, defeated the Canadian player after a hard-fought match at a tie-break after scores of 7-6, 4-6, 10-7. Lazaro will also take the court in the evening when he it with a win, this time 38-21, halftime 17-7 over Argentina, but they failed to score the points needed to dethrone New Zealand as the champions of the Southern Hemisphere. The Boks squandered a number of opportunities and made some uncharacteristic errors in the first half, but still scored twice through Jasper Wiese from a push-over scrum and Siya Kolisi from a dominant line-out more, with Frans Steyn adding both conversions and a penalty goal to pull Holst in the lead by 17-0. In your weather, Pretoria will be sunny and hot with temperature highs of 32 degrees. Johannesburg, sunny and hot with temperature highs of 30 degrees. Cape Town, partly cloudy and cool with temperature highs of 21 degrees. Durban, sunny and hot with temperature highs of 33 degrees. Bloemfontein, cloudy and hot with temperature highs of 33 degrees and scattered thundershowers. Polokwane, sunny and hot with temperature highs of 30 degrees. Upington, partly cloudy and hot with temperature highs of 34 degrees. Port Elizabeth, cloudy and warm with temperature highs of 21 degrees with extensive thundershowers. East London, cloudy and hot with temperature highs of 27 degrees with scattered thundershowers. For Vuka Online Radio News, I am Mongas Makalima.
If this 1970s elevator music is causing you to bob your head and tap your foot, you may be experiencing symptoms of extreme boredom. Try new, fast-acting Subaru Impreza in hatch or sedan, formulated with symmetrical full-time all-wheel drive and Apple CarPlay for maximum fun and effective relief from yawning. Cure boredom fast with new Impreza. Talk to your Subaru dealer to see if Impreza is right for you. This sporty compact may cause prolonged smiling. Available Harman Kardon premium audio system greatly increases the chances of new playlists.
Vuka Online Radio, your inspiration radio station.
Thinking back in time when love was only in my mind, I realized no second chance, you got to hold on to romance, don't let it slide. There's a special kind of magic in the air when you find another heart that needs to share. Baby, come to me, let me put my arms around you. This was meant to be, and I'm also glad I found you, need you every day. Gotta have your love around me, baby, always stay. Cause I can't go back to living without you. Spending every dime to keep you talking on the line, that's how it was. And all those walks together, out in any kind of weather, just because there's a brand new way of looking at your life when you know that love is standing by your side. Baby, come to me, let me put my arms around you. This was meant to be, and I'm also glad I found you. I'm so glad that I found you. Gotta have your love around me, baby. oh so glad I found you, need you every day. Gotta have your love around me, baby, always stay. 'Cause I can't go back to living without you. Come to me, let me put my arms around you. This was meant to be. And I'm also glad I found you, need you every day. Gotta have your love around me, baby, always stay.
'Cause I can't go back to living without you.
Come to me, let me put my arms around you. This was meant to be. And I'm also glad I found you, need you every day. Gotta have your love around me, baby, always stay.
If you're enjoying this interruption and find the sound of my voice captivating, you may be experiencing extreme boredom. Try new, fast-acting Subaru Impreza in hatch or sedan, formulated with symmetrical full-time all-wheel drive. Cure boredom fast with new Impreza.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this exhilarating episode of PK Unshackled. I'm your man, Makawa Katide, and this is the day that the Lord hath made. For you are chilling with us and listening to PK Unshackled. And thank you for spending your Sunday morning with us. Now, today we have a show like no other. And I say this with a lot of anticipation, because we are joined by none other than Dr. Lehasa Rich Moloi, who is a scholar. We're not about to write to Duncan. There's people who educate themselves to a level of brilliance. Doctor, how are you?
I'm good, and how are you?
I have no problem. A bit of a hangover, but the Lord is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Now we are the people that exercise the fact that Jesus made water into wine. So we drink that wine, unlike other people who don't drink that wine.
Responsibly so.
Yes, sir. So, today's topic is, simply put, is how do we make Africa ours? But before you answer anything, let's take a quick break, pay our bills. I also need to top up my red wine. And then after that, we just go full steam ahead.
If you're enjoying this interruption and find the sound of my voice captivating, you may be experiencing extreme boredom. Try new, fast-acting Subaru Impreza in hatch or sedan, formulated with symmetrical full-time all-wheel drive. Cure boredom fast with new Impreza.
Stay woke with Vuka Online Radio.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us on PK Unshackled. I'm your host, Makau Kakide, and I'm spending my Sunday morning with Dr. Lehasa Rich Moloi. Doctor, for those who don't know who Dr. Moloi is, please, I don't have big words like you, but please enlighten us who Dr. Moloi is.
Was born and bred in Kwakwa. That is in the Eastern Free State. And that's where I grew up. And then was a good church boy, raised very well by Me Linta Temloi, Subuki Mukwakwa, and graduated for my matric in 1995 from Mampoi High School, from which then I proceeded with my studies at the university from 1996 at UNISA, doing politics, African politics and development, and until I completed in 1999. Then I started working at UNISA furthering my honors, my master's, until then in 2021, I completed my PhD. But beyond that, which is besides your academic issues, I am a DJ on weekends, soul and R&B. And sometimes I do enjoy some break dancing. But I'm also a father, and yeah, 2 boys, 2 girls. I cook. Yeah, man, all those things. And in between, go to the gym, try to shape up. Then and there, I enjoy fun. I rhyme sometimes I sing. All of that mixed in one bottle. But most above all, I really have found passion in public speaking. Not a mere speaking, but to interrogate the history, culture, and assert the agency of African people against many years of that dehumanization. So this is my mission, passion, and what gives me the edge to wake up every morning to break the chains of mental enslavement, so that like fish in water, we swim around like a bird in the air. We outstretch our wings, because freedom is life and life is freedom. That.
Yeah, Adam. And amazingly, you know, Ntate Moloi, what I like is that you didn't buy your PhD, unlike some of my friends who are pastors who buy PhDs left, right, and center. And then they have like 70 titles, Dr. Archbishop, nonsense, man. But anyway, so today's topic in that work, simply put, how do we make Africa ours? Now, we can discuss from a historical perspective, a social perspective, a political perspective, and an economic perspective. I see, you know, there's millionaires, there's billionaires, there's black billionaires, there's black industrialists across the board. You know, your Dangotes, your Mutsepes, Strive, you know, there's people who are making money, but the majority of Africans who live in Africa do not own, first of all, the land. They do not own the resources in the land. They have no means to turn that land into revenue, into livelihood, into sustenance. That the reducing more Africa and how what are your thoughts, or how would you answer that question? How do we make Africa ours?
Yes, a very important question. In that question, an assumption or a position has already been expressed, which is Africans don't own Africa, though they are Africans. And so that is a very pregnant statement that will need us to travel a journey in history to deconstruct, to understand that what happened to us, so that we understand our present dilemmas. What happens to our minds? I think in the words of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the Pan-Africanist of note and Black liberator, expressed that a people without knowledge of their historical past are similar to a tree without roots. The current dilemmas that we face are rooted in a history of African dismemberment. To be dismembered simply means to be broken, like split pieces of a broken mirror reflections. We see ourselves as multiple parts broken on a floor and long for rememberment, meaning for union. So a people who have been broken become the imps and the imitators of those that broke them. So number one, the is a byproduct of 500 years of those who invaded Africa and dislocated Africans from their glory and from their position of power. Meaning I will approach this topic from two narratives. There is a European idea of Africa, the European made Africa. There is an African idea of Africa long before what we can consider as 1492 as the pivotal moment in the rise of modern Europe, which is now responsible for why you and I speak in English as the clones of the British Empire. So I'm going to start firstly by saying the Africa that we have today is not the Africa that was. If we trace it back to 3,400 years before Christian God, before Christ, we find that they were the Nile Valley inhabitants by the names of the Badari villagers, whose brilliance was associated with the Nile River and the activities and the innovations which they created around that valley, which gave birth to human civilizations. So we learn such a great wisdom from the artifacts that they made, which tells us something about the brilliance of those early Africans, or we can say classical Africans, in the area called Kemet, which means black in a classical word, which Greeks came to call Egypt, which still means black, or Ethiopia, which is a combination of two Greek words, Aiwa, I bend, Bia, face, the country of the sunburned faces, which were symbolic of power, might, the builders of the pyramids, the great dynasties, those who were obedient to the law of Ma'at, the law of evenness, the law of order. By their own belief and greatness and innovative mind, they gave us the concept of Ra, the concept of God, which today has been appropriated mostly from Islamic and from the Christian point of view as hegemonic forces in the history of Africa's existence. So in a way, as a way of introducing the conversation, I am saying to dispel the redundancy among African people. People who became labeled by some of the European authors such as David Hume and W.G.F. Hegel, who insulted us that we are the subhuman animals without a spirit, without a soul, a people without history and a people without culture. Such a people have a history, and a history that is rich. So I'm saying, as a starting point from your question of how do we make Africa great, we need to start firstly by debunking the myths that were created by the enemies of African people who have displaced us from our position of power. Once we get key into our own history, we begin to remember who we are. Of course, if you go biblically, you encounter a text that says, for a people who does not know their God will not be able to stand up and do exploits, but they that know their God will do amazing things. That speaks to the question of identity. So when you speak with a person who does not know who he is, who has been given the name, who has been psychologically programmed into something else, such a people, born of Bantu education, born of colonial education, are the imitators, are the enslaved, are the mummified, or the living dead. Let me stop there.
Okay, that is informative, educational. So what you're saying is that historically, we as Africans lost our identity. Now, let us link identity to the political discussion. If you have been, scattered and changed and colonized, and you are forced to understand Christian civilization and Eurocentric or Western civilization as the only way of living your life, how do you then link the issue of identity and politics? Because if you don't know yourself, how are you going to govern yourself the way you want to be governed?
You are raising a very important issue, which is why then some of the Professor Malifikete Asante, who I happen to be his student, and not only a student, but to have spent time with him, both in the country, which is a day ago, as he came to collect his honorary doctorates at VET, but who I also get to spend time with in Philadelphia, Temple University. He introduced the idea in the early 1970s called Afrocentricity. He argues that a people of Africa must be grounded within their own narratives, within their own history, within their own culture, and must then assert themselves, without which they remain as displaced from their own center, thus participating in the history, in the culture, or as the agents of something else which has nothing to do with their own destiny. So I'm therefore saying that even the current modern political frameworks as we see them through parliamentary political parties are part and parcel of a project of African dismemberment that is born of Berlin Conference of 1884, 1885, as a prison that created the economic borders, which are the boundaries that are 54, that divided a continent of Africa. So we therefore exist within the neo-colonial world, which means we are entrapped within the matrix of the colonial empires. Even the very politics that we participate in make us the agents that serves within the framework that we did not create nor construct. Why do I say that? Remember, our ancestors in the early 18th century, or I can start by saying the late 17th century, through what is called anti-colonial political struggles, aimed at liberating themselves by confronting in the battlefield the white administrators or the white colonialists, whether you talk about Mau Mau rebellion, Chimurenga, you talk about Poko here at home, we realized that many battles were actually waged, whether you talk about the Bambata rebellion, you will realize that Africans in the continent waged war with white administration up until the point of the 1950s, where just in the aftermath of the Second World War, political decolonization project started, colonial administration, which were won by political parties that we now have through Pan-Africanism. We have seen many rising African liberators across the continent who fought. And in the aftermath of that, which would be 1963, the birth of OAU, led by King Haile Selassie, who gave a speech of unity. But the problem that I'm therefore seeing is that as much as the Pan-Africanist sentiment gave us an organization of African Union in our war against the colonial empires, we did not recreate Africa after our own terms of reference. We embraced the same colonial borders that we have, which today have created problems of xenophobia and foreignness on the basis of the borders that were created during 1884-1885 colonial conference. So in a way, I think, yes, we need to be politically conscious, but what is our politics? Our politics must be about our own reassertion. But to assert ourselves, we got to know ourselves and our history. That.
Okay, so in the greater scheme of things, I mean, in the history of Africa, you found guys like Musa, who's reportedly the richest guy or person who ever lived,
Mansa Musa, yes.
Mansa Musa. I mean, this guy, in terms of his wealth, reportedly, it's hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, yes. You ask yourself, from having somebody who was at the top of the world, we can equate him to Elon Musk or the Amazon guy, or Mark Zuckerberg. That they have no competition, they have no rival. Then my question is it our fault that we find ourselves not owning much of what we are supposed to own? But before you answer that, let's take a quick break and then pay our bills, and then we'll chat some more when we come back.
No one decides to go into debt. It creeps up on you, slowly. Debt follows debt, follows debt. Unless you do something about it. Face your debt problems before they cripple you. It's time to do something.
More music, more inspiration. Vuka Online.
Tobela, and thank you for joining us. Makau Katida here. Spending my Sunday morning with Dr. Rich Moloi. My brother, before the break, I asked a question. Hore, you know, we talk of Mapungubia, we talk of great African civilizations. The same way we talk about the Mayans and the Aztecs and the whatnot. But in African history, there's Mansa Musa, who was, you know, by far the richest person who ever lived. So what happened? From being top of the food chain, and now we are bottom of the food chain. You know, the Chinese are spitting on us. I saw with great concern a video of some Chinese mistreating Africans in Africa. And I'm like, what happened to our pride? What happened? What do you think happened in terms of, you know, our consciousness? We are top of the food chain and now we're at the bottom.
Yeah. I mean, which is why that I've been trying to say that the best way to deal with that is that we would need to travel the journey to history. What is the significance of history in this context? Is to look back and take power. History is a Sankofa act. To know who we are, to know what we have lost, to know what is broken in us. We've got to look back. What that also means, it's our future is past us. Looking back to claim our future, to remember the greatness of our ancestry, to recognize that where we are is not where we're supposed to be. Which is why my issue is that be it politics, be it economics, a people who firstly are not conscious of themselves cannot arise. You know, for those who come to the churches, the closest of what awakening could be is a story somewhere in the book of Luke that talks about the prodigal son, who was once in the position of greatness, but lost it all. But when he came to his senses, he said to himself, I will arise. Arising, which is part of a political awakening, much of what we call today African Renaissance. What is it that which we are reviving amongst Africans? Is the consciousness of their former glory and their dethronement as a strategy to resurrect the appetite for greatness again. We who were born from great ancestors, we who were dethroned through violent encounters, beginning with the Roman Empire, Alexander, so-called the Great, who invaded Kemet around 333 BC and squandered some of the achievements that were made, artifacts such as the Rosetta Stone. Some of them, they had to destroy the noses of the Sphinx as a way to hide evidence of our former greatness. What does consciousness of our past that is great make of us? We've got to awaken. We've got to remember. So I think for me, here, the critical issue also becomes the issue of memory. A displaced memory, a distorted memory, a colonized mind, a Bantu educated glorifies the oppressors. But you see, when we resuscitate the spirit of greatness by remembering our ancestry, we begin to live as a people who become conscious. And we began to rewind. We began to turn the steering wheel of our lives, respect ourselves, and start looking around our own environment, developing positive ideas that began to lead us out of this imprisonment. So therefore, much of what we are doing with programs such as yours, Brother Makawe, they are about spreading consciousness of being. When the mind becomes restored, slaves or enslavement chain begins to fall off. Just as Stephen Bantu Biko himself said it, that the minds of the colonized or the oppressed are a weapon in the hands of their own oppressors. So part of your program, it is about making psychological intervention to invade, to engage the mind for the purposes of restoration. When fully restoration takes place, a restored person will begin to take control of his own destiny, whether be it in politics, even whether be it in economics. So what I'm therefore saying is that recitation of history alone is not enough if it does not propel us to catapult to the position of greatness by standing up. Otherwise, we continue to drown within tracks, within processes of destructive behavioral pattern, which is why then education becomes a key to liberation. How will they awaken if they do not know? But to know, somebody must stand up and tell them. But for that somebody to know, they've got to have read something, they've got to have engaged with some sort of information to spark change. Isn't that?
But the thing is, we've been saying, this discussion we are having, our fathers had it, our forefathers had it, our guys, as Black Africans, as Bantu Africans, as the great Kemetic Africans, we need to rise and claim our position in the world order. But in the last 300 years, that I don't see any significant change in terms of us reclaiming that. You know, the discussion is repetitive. It just gets more intelligent, more clever. We hoy bombastic words. You know, we drink expensive cognacs and Cuban cigars, and then nothing tangible happens.
Well, you are raising an important issue, but it is also depends on where you are located when you do an analysis. I think Africa is rising because of Africans that choose to rise. We also need to become aware that liberation will not come from heaven down to us. But the words of Marcus Garvey is that we will liberate ourselves. I see Africans who have taken an opportunity to improve their whereabouts. But I also see Africans who have given up hope, who have indulged in destructive behavioral patterns. The words of Kwame Nkrumah is that we are not Africans because we live in Africa, but because Africa is alive in us. When we hear the words of liberation this day, we liberate ourselves. I don't think so much that our liberation shall come from the parliament. I think we will need to look to ourselves. We have skills. I'm reminded of a priest who visited some house when he engaged with the Old Testament, found a woman with a son who were left with the last meal, and to which they would relent to death after eating. Although this man walked in and asked to be the one to be served first, I'm more intrigued by the question that he asked this woman. He said, "What do you have in your house?" And the woman said, "I have a pint of oil and one pot." And then he said to the woman, "Go into the village, borrow all the pots that you can get." The woman did that. And this man prayed a blessing over the oil, and then the miracle happened that created the livelihoods for this woman. What do I pick up from that story? You may have a talent which you do not have to bury, which can become the source of your supply for yourself and your family. You don't have to undermine it and say, "I'm just a poor mechanic." We need to begin to respect our own ideas. We need to also respect the power of association, and always be bothered by looking around to those who can become part of our own creative forces to create things. When you take your smartphone,
You're breaking up a bit there.
Contacts. When you press it, it says you become the creator. You are the creator. We operate with our own ideas. So nothing can be born from emptiness. When you touch Facebook page, they ask you a question. What is in your mind? Who is asking that question?
Facebook.
No, it's not just Facebook. Facebook, it's a heuristic device used to infiltrate your mind. Tell us what is in your mind. The owner of Facebook the admin staff of Facebook. And your response, this is what I think. Now, people get to know of yourself, your whereabouts, because you share them. That this is what I think. So what I'm trying to say is that you are the creator, but you create from something. For this reason, I operate in the space of education, in which I believe that ideas are very important. And we must be able to respect our own ideas. Somewhere in the book of Haggai, man, interesting enough, I still have one of the oldest written book by your dad, Pastor Pakatide, of I have a dream in which he narrates the story of Joseph. And he quotes Haggai somewhere in that book where it talks about, write down your vision, though it delays, surely it shall come. When we take the narrative of the young Joseph, the young brilliant mind who saw himself becoming a great star, what visions do we have? What dreams do we have? So I think it will always begin with ideas. And, you know, people without ideas of their own become the slaves of other people's visions. And that's why we need to be bothered. Our minds are just like a computer. What kind of a memory are we inserting from which we will need to retrieve from at a later stage? What is the bank of our own ideas? What ideas have we stored? So I think that for me becomes a very critical issue that we need to become very careful, that we just do not live, just do not bask in front of the television and watch soapy after soapy. We need to maybe shut down the TV or begin to be attuned to programs that are going to help us to awaken us from the poverty of ideas. Yes, and that's where the hope will come from. And once we begin to operate from that narrative, I believe that money is born from ideas. It does not bring it. They say men make the money, but the money never made a man. The people with money today developed ideas. Through those ideas,
they made a lot of money. Okay, let's take a quick break. After the break,
so what do you have in your mind? I will ask that. What do you have in the pocket? Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, let's take a quick break, and then after the break, we will wrap up. But interesting conversation. That's why we need to have a part 2 of this. But yeah, let's take a quick break.
If this 1970s elevator music is causing you to bob your head and tap your foot, you may be experiencing symptoms of extreme boredom. Try new, fast-acting Subaru Impreza in hatch or sedan, formulated with symmetrical full-time all-wheel drive and Apple CarPlay for maximum fun and effective relief from yawning. Cure boredom fast with new Impreza. Talk to your Subaru dealer to see if Impreza is right for you. This sporty compact may cause prolonged smiling. Available Harman Kardon premium audio system greatly increases the chances of new playlists.
More music, more inspiration. Vuka Online.
Hello. We're back, and thank you for tuning in once more to PK Unshackled. Makau I'm spending my Sunday morning with the DJ of note who plays R&B music on weekends. Yeah, I don't like R&B, Dr. Yo, I know, God will forgive me. If they play R&B in heaven, I am not going.
Yeah, well, I'm more of the 90s kind of a guy. You know, you talk about Shy, you talk about Judesi, you know, you talk about UNV, you talk about all those groups, but also I go a bit quite neo soul, and I go classical soul, and I, soulful hip hop, R&B, hip hop. No, sometimes those different categories.
And easy.
I know that you are house crazy. I know that.
I know. If house music was a religion, I would have been a high priest. I would have had a church as big as the CC, I tell you. But anyway,
yeah, man.
So going back to, we've had a very lengthy discussion, and I feel that we definitely need to have a part 2 and discuss this question from a cultural point of view. As a man, as a woman, as a child, what can we do to collectively do this? But what would you like to say in closing? We literally have 2 minutes left.
I think reaching out to every young person out there to say we need to take note, if I were to quote the words of David of old, that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, that we were born for a great purpose, and every life that is here must discover itself, and that we need to leave an imprint, we need to leave a mark that parents and our parents' parents who fought big wars to see us through. Maybe I should state it and say that we are sperms that shoots from eternity past. We are victorious seeds. We must not relent into despair. We must not even consider suicide, dying before the appointed time. Let us use time profitably. Let us assess our surroundings. Let us check the kind of the energies that we are connected with. Let us invest our time in a most brilliant way. Let us assess the kind of the relationships that we have, because those people that we keep define our own destinies. And I think let us introspect ourselves and check, are we in the right? Let us leave good memories. Receive a wife, love her. If very important issues, let us simply live purposefully. For us, in the words of Miles Monroe, where purpose is not known, abuse is inevitable. So let us take power, let us claim ourselves and make it. Apostle Paul encouraged the men to pick up the pieces when the ship wrecked and said, pick up the pieces and be able to make it to the land. I'm saying, what is left of you in the present days, make it grow. That little bit of life, make it grow so that we can make it to the top of the mountain where lies victory. Ndati.
Ndati Moloi, thank you very much. In due course, we'll do a part 2 to this. But thank you very much. Very informative, very thought-provoking. And, in the greatest scheme of things, as Africans, when you wake up in the morning, ask yourself this question: how do I make this Africa mine? In terms of the land, the air, the sky, and take pride in the history, the culture, the social political progression of life that happened in Africa, so that we're here.
Yes.
If you find yourself in a rut, don't lose hope. There is still time for us to change the narrative, but we must change it now. The time is now. Let's make Africa ours. Makau Katide signing out. Stay tuned for the Gospel Hour, and after the Gospel Hour, in the evening, there's some jazz, and man, have yourself a great Sunday.
Vuka Online Radio, your inspiration radio.
Vuka Online. Welcome to Vuka Online Radio News at this hour. Iran's main reformist party called Saturday for an end to the mandatory Islamic dress code for women in force since 1983 after 8 straight nights of protests. The Union of Islamic Iran People's Party also called for the winding down of the morality police charged with enforcing code following the death in their custody of 22-year-old Kurdish woman Mahsa Amini on September 2016. The party, which is led by former aides of reformist ex-president Mohammad Khatami, who oversaw a thaw in the West between 1997 and 2005, called on the authorities to prepare the legal elements necessary for the repeal of the law on mandatory hijab. At least 35 people have been killed and hundreds wounded in the protests that erupted after Amini's death. According to official figures, hundreds more have been arrested